on me, and I fled, and later in a dream it seemed to me as if the goddess stood beside my bed, threatening me with upraised arm. I was sent to school early, and soon reached the gymnasium. I passionately grasped at everything which promised to make the world of antiquity accessible to me. Soon I was more familiar with the gods of Greece than with the religion of Jesus. I was with Paris when he gave the fateful apple to Venus. I saw Troy burn, and followed Ulysses on his wanderings. The prototypes of all that is beautiful sank deep into my soul, and consequently, at the time when other boys are coarse and obscene, I displayed an insurmountable aversion to everything base, vulgar, and unbeautiful. To me, the maturing youth, love for woman seemed something especially base and unbeautiful, for it showed itself to me first in all its commonness. I avoided all contact with the fair sex. In short, I was supersensual to madness. When I was about 14, my mother had a charming chambermaid, young, attractive, with a figure just budding into womanhood. I was sitting one day studying my Tacitus, and growing enthusiastic over the virtues of the ancient Teutons, while she was sweeping my room. Suddenly she stopped, bent down over me, in the meantime holding fast to the broom, and a pair of fresh, full, adorable lips touched mine. The kiss of the enamoured little cat ran through me like a shudder, but I raised up my Germania like a shield against the temptress, and indignantly left the room. Wanda broke out in loud laughter. "It would indeed be hard to find another man like you. But continue." "There is another unforgettable incident belonging to that period," I continued my story. "Countess Sobol, a distant aunt of mine, was visiting my parents. She was a beautiful, majestic woman, with an attractive smile. I, however, hated her, for she was regarded by the family as a sort of Messalina. My behaviour toward her was as rude, malicious, and awkward as possible. One day my parents drove to the capital of the district. My aunt determined to take advantage of their absence, and to exercise judgment over me. She entered unexpectedly in her fur-lined kazabika, followed by the cook, kitchen-maid, and the cat of a chambermaid, whom I had scorned. Without asking any questions, she seized and bound me hand and foot, in spite of my violent resistance. Then my aunt, with an evil smile, rolled up her sleeve, and began to whip me with a stout switch. She whipped me so hard that the blood flowed, and that at last, notwithstanding my heroic spirit, I cried and wept and begged for mercy. She then had me untied, but I had to get down on my knees and thank her for the punishment, and kiss her hand. Now you understand the supersensual fool. Under the lash of a beautiful woman, my senses first realized the meaning of woman. In her fur jacket she seemed to me like a wrathful queen, and from then on my aunt became the most desirable woman on God's earth. My Cato-like austerity, my shyness before woman, was nothing but an excessive feeling for beauty. In my imagination sensuality became a sort of cult. I took an oath to myself that I would not squander its holy wealth upon any ordinary person, but I would reserve it for an ideal woman, if possible, for the goddess of love herself. I went to the university at a very early age. It was in the capital, where my aunt lived. My room looked at that time like Dr. Faustus. Everything in it was in a wild confusion. There were huge closets stuffed full of books, which I bought for a song from a Jewish dealer on the Cervanica. There were globes, atlases, flasks, charts of the heavens, skeletons of animals, skulls, the busts of eminent men. It looked as though Mephistopheles might have stepped out from behind the huge green store as a wandering scholiast at any moment. I studied everything in a jumble, without system, without selection: chemistry, alchemy, history, astronomy, philosophy, law, anatomy, and literature. I read Homer, Virgil, Ossian, Schiller, Goethe, Shakespeare, Cervantes, Voltaire, Molière, the Koran, the Cosmos, Casanova's Memoirs. I grew more confused each day, more fantastical, more supersensual. All the time a beautiful ideal woman hovered in my imagination. Every so and so often she appeared before me like a vision among my leather-bound books and dead bones lying on a bed of roses, surrounded by cupids. Sometimes she appeared gowned like the Olympians, with the stern white face of the plaster Venus, sometimes in braids of her rich brown, blue eyes and my aunt's red velvet casabaica, trimmed with ermine. One morning, when she had again risen out of the golden mists of my imagination in all her smiling beauty, I went to see the Countess Sobol, who received me in a friendly, even cordial manner. She gave me a kiss of welcome, which put all my senses in a turmoil. She was probably about 40 years old, but like most well-preserved women of the world, still very attractive. She wore, as always, her fur-edged jacket. This time it was one of the green velvet with brown marten, but nothing of the sternness which had so delighted me the other time was now discernible. On the contrary, there was so little of cruelty in her that without any more ado she let me adore her. Only too soon did she discover my supersensual folly and innocence, and it pleased her to make me happy. As for myself, I was as happy as a young god. What rapture for me to be allowed to lie before her on my knees and to kiss her hands, those with which she had scourged me. What marvelous hands they were! Of beautiful form, delicate, rounded, and white, with adorable dimples. I really was in love with her hands only. I played with them, let them submerge and emerge in the dark fur, held them against the light, and was unable to satiate my eyes with them. Wanda involuntarily looked at her hand. I noticed it and had to smile. From the way in which the supersensual predominated in me in those days, you can see that I was in love only with the cruel lashes I received from my aunt. And about 2 years later, when I paid court to a young actress, only in the role she played. Still later, I became the admirer of a respectable woman. She acted the part of irreproachable virtue, only in the end to betray me with a rich Jew. You see, it is because I was betrayed, sold, by a woman who feigned the strictest principles and the highest ideals, that I hate the sort of poetical, sentimental virtue so intensely. Give me rather a woman who is honest enough to say to me, I am a Pompadour, a Lucretia Borgia, and I am ready to adore her. Wanda rose and opened the window. You have a curious way of arousing one's imagination, stimulating all one's nerves, and making one's pulses beat faster. You put an aureole on vice, provided only if it is honest. Your ideal is a daring courtesan of genius. Oh, you are the kind of man who will corrupt a woman to her very last fibre. In the middle of the night there was a knock at my window. I got up, opened it, and was startled. Without stood Venus in furs, just as she had appeared to me the first time. You have disturbed me with your stories. I have been tossing about in bed and can't go to sleep, she said. Now come and stay with me. In a moment, as I entered, Wanda was crouching by the fireplace, where she had kindled a small fire. Autumn is coming, she began. The nights are really quite cold already. I'm afraid you may not like it, but I can't put off my furs until the room is sufficiently warm. Not like it? You are joking, you know. I threw my arm around her and kissed her. Of course, I know. But why this great fondness for furs? I was born with it, I replied. I already had it as a child. Furthermore, furs have a stimulating effect on all highly organized natures. This is due to both general and natural laws. It is a physical stimulus which sets you tingling, and no one can wholly escape it. Science has recently shown a certain relationship between electricity and warmth. At any rate, their effects upon the human organism are related. The torrid zone reproduces more passionate characters, a heated atmosphere stimulation. Likewise with electricity. This is the reason why the presence of cats exercise such a magic influence upon highly organized men of intellect. This is why these long-tailed graces of the animal kingdom, those adorable scintillating electric batteries, have been the favorite animal of a Mohammed, Cardinal Richelieu, Crebillon, Rousseau, Violent. A woman wearing furs, then, cried Wanda, is nothing more than a large cat, an augmented electric battery. "Certainly," I replied. "That is my explanation of the symbolic meaning which fur has acquired as the attribute of power and beauty. Monarchs